Okay, so we're going to be drawing our foundation plan. So this is a little demo on how to get started doing your foundation plan. Now this won't be everything in your foundation plan. You'll definitely want to go through the notes that we've discussed last class in order to figure out what information needs to be on there. But I'll just get you guys going on it anyways and get you started on that. Now the one thing I want to point out is that I have made changes to the layers in AutoCAD. The layers that I'm going to be using for this demo are according to the layers that you see here in D2L. So under number 3, module 3, instructions, configuring layers, you want to make sure that you're synchronized because these are the layers I'll be using in my video. And so I know there's a lot there and it's changed drastically from what it was before yesterday. Yesterday I made these changes. So make sure that you're synchronized with those before you get started. Otherwise you might find it's a little tricky to follow along with the video. The first thing that I also want to focus in on here is our line type scales. So we've got several types of lines within this layer scheme. Center lines, hidden lines, dashed lines, things like that. We want to make sure that they're showing up properly. Right? So once we actually draw a line, I'll show you how to make sure that the LT scales are set properly so that that can takes place. But the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that there's a couple settings first, our MSLT scale and our PSLT scale that are configured properly. So I'm going to type in MSLT scale, and MSLT scale is your model space LT scale. Make sure that that is set to 0. You might have 1 as a default. AutoCAD includes that as 1. That might be 1 for you. You might want to change that to 0. Same with PSLT scale. Change PSLT scale to 0 as well. Now what that means is that when you see a line in model space, you want that line to be what you see is what you get. When you get into paper space, you want it to be the same type of line. If you have those two values configured to 0, then what you see in model space is what you're going to get in paper space. So sometimes it can get really frustrating when you see a line in model space, that's what you want, you get to paper space, it's different, it's because those two values are set to 1. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to check our LT scale, and normally I think this starts at 1, so we'll just leave it at 1 for now. This is sort of default, but we may end up changing it once we actually get some lines drawn in the plan so that we can see there's some guidelines that I'm going to give you which help you to make sure that the LT scales are approximately what they should be for this particular plan. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw our foundation wall. So I'm going to go down to the proper layer, which is S foundation. Easy. If you haven't set your units properly, you're going to get a little frustrated. So let me show you how my units are set up, just so that you understand what it is that you need to make sure you have. So you should have architectural, 1/8 inch precision, and your units to insert content is inches. You want to make sure that those are in inches. If those are anything other than inches, you might have some issues while drawing this, and I'll show you why this is handy to have as inches, because anything you draw, if you draw a line at a certain length, turn my ortho on here, if I want to make that line 8 inches long, I can just type in 8, and I don't need to type in the inches sign. I don't need to put in the little quote symbol. I can actually just put in 8, and it'll draw that line 8 inches long. If I want that line to be 8 feet, that's the only time I need to use the apostrophe symbol, and I can type in 8 feet. Now that line is now 8 feet long. So if you have your units to scale inserted content set at inches, anything you draw in inches, you don't need to worry about that little symbol anymore. So because I'm going to draw my rectangle for my plan, hang on a second here, rectangle, and I want it to be in feet, I will have to include the units for feet. So I'm going to do at, right, the at symbol. So I want to make sure that it's from the base point that I've selected there. And the dimensions that we have are 21 feet in the X direction and 27 feet in the Y direction. Oh, you see I made a mistake there. I didn't put the feet symbol in. So it went to 21 inches by 27 feet. Let's undo that. Do that again. So rectangle from point at 21 feet. I forgot that one before, comma, 27 feet. And now I should get, there we are, I should get a plan that is 21 by 27. So you'll notice that this is a polyline. I wanted it to be a polyline because it's actually going to make my future steps, going to make the rest of my drawing a lot easier, because I now need to offset this in several different directions. And if it's a polyline, it makes it really easy to do that. If I draw a whole bunch of lines, if I draw 4 separate lines, then when I offset, I have to offset each one individually, and then I have to trim out the excess around the corners. If you do it as a polyline using a rectangle as your base, then it makes it really easy to do that. You just go to offset. I want to offset 8 inches. That's the dimension of our concrete, and you'll notice that it offsets and it cleans up the corners for me automatically, because the next line that I have drawn is also a polyline. It offsets the polyline to the center 8 inches. That's really handy. Next thing I want to do is I want to offset for my strip footing. So remember, the strip footing is 16 by 6, or 16 inches wide, and it is centered directly under the foundation wall, which means that my offset value is going to be 4 inches. I'm going to be offsetting 4 inches to the outside and 4 inches to the inside. That's my strip footing. Now let me zoom in a little bit on this, because we do need to change the layers now, because these are no longer foundation wall layers, they're footing layers. So I come to my layer list here and I go to S foundation, FTNG, that's footing. And now I change layer. This is now where we can see the line type scales, because this is actually a dotted line. It's underneath the level of the ground and underneath the slab on the inside of the foundation wall. So it's going to be a hidden line. So if you notice in our layer setups, S foundation footing is a hidden line. It's hidden times 2 actually. But we're going to take a look at that. Now for the hidden line, you'll notice that as I zoom in closer, you can see the dashes. Those dashes should be a certain length. Maybe I'll find one here that has a hidden line so we can really do a test. There we go. So columns hidden. Let's try that one. Let's draw a line using columns hidden. Okay, and then, okay, actually we may have gone the wrong way here. And I'll draw another line 6 inches long. Oops. Let's draw a regular line 6 inches long. Okay, now we'll adjust our LT scale. Let me try 12 here. Now let's try 15, 18, 20, 24. That's looking pretty good. Try 24 here. Let's see. Yeah, that's looking pretty close. Alright, so that's a true hidden line. This is hidden times 2. Goes the opposite way, I guess, but that's okay. So we want our hidden lines to be, when we finally print them, about 2.5 to 3 millimeters long. And that's what the 6-inch line means. When we apply the scale factor for our drawing, it will end up being, these lines will end up being 2.5 to 3 millimeters long. So if we go to our paper space, let me just find that drawing in our paper space here. There it is. We can see what it looks like in paper space. You see that what you see in paper space is what we have in model space. You can see that they're the same, because we made those changes to those to MSLT scale and PSLT scale. Okay, so the next thing that we want to draw is we want to do the columns that are in the center of that particular plan. So those are actually structural columns, and they're hidden structural columns because they're actually below the level of the slab. So we have an S columns hidden, and we want those to be, you know, organized in here. There's 5 of them all together. So if you were to roll a dice with the number 5 on it, that's what we want it to look like. With the, you know, a dice that's rolled with 5, we want it to look like that. So I'm going to draw a couple construction lines to start with here. Turn on my O-snap here. I'm going to draw a construction line from corner to corner, and another one from one corner to the other corner. These lines will get deleted, so it doesn't matter what layer they're on. And now I'm going to draw a circle in the very center that's going to be the diameter of the columns that I want out of concrete, and that's 12 inches. So I'm going to do a diameter of 12. Okay, that's what we want to have, but we want to have another one over here, another one over here, another one here, and another one here. So the way that I like to do that is actually use the divide command. You guys are familiar with the divide command, right? So we want to divide this, and we're going to divide each of these lines into 4 equal segments. And now I can delete the, oops, there's the point. I clicked right on the point. We can delete those lines, and we'll see that we're left with little dots that essentially are equally spacing these columns. So I'm just going to copy one to this point here, this point here, this point here, and this point here. So now we have equally spaced columns in our plan. And then we just delete out those little dots. We don't need them anymore. We don't want them showing up on the final print. And they will show up if you don't delete them. So now it looks like a dice that you've rolled the number 5 with. And that, if you look, that, you know, these are mostly just to support the concrete slab. And so they don't need to be specifically dimensioned, they don't need to be specifically located. We just want to provide an approximate location for them. Alright, so while I'm on this layer, S columns hidden, I'm going to try a different layer here. I'm going to go to S foundation hidden. So this is a foundation type item that's hidden. I'm going to do my precast brackets now. So my precast brackets are 3 inches wide by 3 feet long. So I'm going to do another rectangle, and I'm going to make that at 3 inches by 3 feet. There's a precast bracket. I'm actually going to move that and attach it to the wall. And I'll locate it along the wall in a second here. I'm going to use a construction line to locate it. So I'll just kind of come up. I'll come over, and I notice the dimension there on the plan is 4 feet. That should be the midpoint of that particular precast bracket. So now I'm going to move this so that it's connected to the midpoint. And then I'll delete my construction lines. And now I can copy this 11 foot 10, which is the dimension between these two precast brackets. And then I'll copy this one, another 4 feet over. That's the dimension to the other precast bracket. Now my precast bracket's located properly on the plan. The next thing I want to do is I want to put in my door bucks. Alright, so I'm going to change the layer back to the foundation wall layer. Okay, so that's my new layer now. And I'm going to actually draw those door bucks in terms of their size. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. Now that rectangle, the door, if we go back to the lecture that we had on the door itself, the slab is going to be 3 feet wide, and it's going to have an 1.5 inch frame on either side. And that 1.5 inch frame will represent, it'll be embedded into the, or not embedded, but it'll be attached to the concrete. Now there may be, there may be actually some wood on either side of the door buck to kind of frame in the concrete, and that's what the frame is going to attach to. So really our door buck should be 3 foot 3 inches, 1.5 inches on either side of the 3 foot door. Okay, so I'm going to make my door buck 3 foot 3, 8. Oops, forgot to use the at symbol. Let's try that again. Oh, hang on. At 3 foot 3, 8. Okay, so there's my door buck for the back, and the location of it is, if you look at the garage floor plan, it's 3 foot 3 from the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw a line, just a construction line, 3 foot 3 from the corner. I'll come down through. This is a construction line. It'll get deleted later, but now I'm actually going to move this using the midpoint to the connection right there. So now I'll just move that door buck into place. I'll delete my construction lines that I used for doing that. And there's my door buck. Now the lines need to be changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my trim command. Enter, enter. I'm going to trim out everything between the door buck, and I'm going to change the layer to a lighter line. I want a lighter line to be there, not as thick as the actual concrete, because if you notice the door bucks on the plan, they're actually thick concrete all around the edges of the door buck, but the actual underside, the part that you would see, is not as thick. And so I'm going to change my layer now, and I'm going to use a detail line. So we have a layer here called A detail. So we have hidden, we have heavy line, we have light line, and medium. So I'm going to try medium line. Draw a line from here to here, and a line from here to here. So now my door buck, those lines should show up thinner than the foundation wall lines. That's what we want. And I'm going to do the same thing for the garage door at the front. So again, I'll switch my layer back to foundation wall layer, do a rectangle, make my rectangle 16 foot 3, because we're going to be 16 feet plus the frame, 16 foot 3 or the jamb, by 8 inches. Okay, again, using, well actually this one here is a little easier because we want it to be centered. So I'm actually going to just move it from center here to center here. Again, use my trim command, enter, enter, trim out the inside, whoops, enter, enter didn't work there. Enter, enter. Okay, trim out the inside, and I'm going to go back to the detail lines here, so A detail medium. Draw a line between, and a line between. So there's my garage door bucks drawn now. So I think we have all the elements that we need to draw are drawn. The precast brackets, the door buck, the walls, the footings, the pads. Now we need to dimension it and add some notes. So I'm going to switch over to the dimension dims. Now these are blue. You guys won't be able to see these very well, so I'm going to make a temporary change to the color of the line. I'm going to change it to yellow just temporarily, okay? And yours are going to be blue, so keep that in mind, but I'm just making a change so that you guys can see it up on the screen. Otherwise you won't be able to see these dimensions. So I'm going to dimension the outside wall first, okay? All my outside wall dimensions, so all four sides. And I'm just arbitrarily placing them. I'll show you a more exact way of placing your dimensions later, but right now I'm going to arbitrarily place them just on the outside. Remember, the outside strings are the ones furthest away, and then anything that's on the inside will be dimensioned closer. So now I'm going to dimension the door buck. Use my dim continue command. So if I go to the annotate tab, use dim continue, and I don't have to re-invoke the command every time. It's a little bit more efficient. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to start from this corner, dimension to the door buck. Whoops, try that again. And use my dim continue. There's the other side of the door buck. There's the end wall. And now I'm going to dimension the precast brackets as well. Right to the center of the precast brackets. Okay. One of the sort of little bit of a presentation thing, I don't like dimension lines that cross each other. So I might actually take this dimension and I might actually sneak it back a little bit. Like so. Because I don't like to cross dimension lines, different types of dimension lines with each other. So this, hopefully people understand that this is the garage door buck, and these are the actual dimensions for the precast brackets. But you know, we've got don't want them to cross over each other. It's just a bit of a presentation thing. You can also use the break. There's a dimension break command. I can't remember what it is offhand, but there's a command that you can use which will actually break those dimensions. Somewhere in here, I can't remember where it is. Anyways. And so they won't actually cross over. Dimension lines won't cross over with extension lines. We don't need to dimension the columns in the center. Those ones are arbitrarily placed. We're just showing approximately where they should go, but they don't need to be specifically dimensioned. They're just supporting the slab. Once the slab gets filled in, or once the space underneath the slab gets filled in, shouldn't have to worry about it too much. Now what I want to show you is I want to show you a command called the dimspace or adjust space command. This command will allow us to adjust the spacing between all of our dimension lines. So let me show you an example. We talked about presentation. We want our first dimension string to be about 3 feet away from the object that it's dimensioning. Okay, so that first dimension line should be about 3 feet away from the edge of this precast bracket. So I'm actually going to, believe it or not, dimension my dimensions and see what I'm at right now. So I'm at 1 foot 3 3/8. I need that to be 3 feet. So I might actually draw a line 3 feet long. And now I'm going to move these dimensions. I'll just move this set here so that it's right at the end of that line. Now you can see I've got 3 feet from the first object being dimensioned to the first dimension line string. So I've dimensioned my dimensions. It's kind of, let me get rid of that construction line I drew there. Now I want to make sure that everything else is sort of lined up in accordance with this first dimension string line. That's where the dimspace command comes in. So what you do is you select, first of all, the base dimension. So this is the good one. This is the one that you want to base all the other dimensions off of. That's your first click. After you've made that one, you don't need to select any other base dimensions. You only can have one. It's going to ask you which dimensions do you want to space based off of that first one. So now I'm going to select all the dimensions which should be along the same line as this one. And after I press enter, it's going to ask me what space do you want to use? What value? How far apart do you want these dimensions to be? Well, I want them to be on the same line, so I'm going to choose 0 for that one. Now watch what happens when I press enter. You'll notice that it brings everything perfectly in line. Now it's a little bit messy still, I know, because I got this one really close. But let me now dimension this one. Here's my base dimension. I'm now going to dimension this dimension, this one, and this one in relation to that base dimension, and I want the space between the dimensions to be 3 feet. Now here you can't use feet. It's a bit of a glitch with AutoCAD. You have to use inches. So I'm going to type in 36 inches. That's the space I want between. And after I press enter, you'll notice that they automatically adjust 3 feet apart. And these are all in line because I selected them all to be adjusted to that one. Now lastly, I'm going to select this as the base dimension. Then I'm going to select this as the dimension I want to space. Go 36 inches again. And you'll notice that they're all neatly 36 inches apart from each other. Now the only change I need to make is I need to bump this one up and this one up so that they don't cross over. So now you can see we're 3 feet from the last object that was dimensioned, and we're 3 feet spacing evenly. If you don't believe me, we can throw a dimension on there and dimension our dimensions. You can see that it's 3 feet spacing. It's pretty handy. So again, I'm just going to go around these lines here. I'm going to do 36 inches here. Do another one over here. And then I'm going to actually bring my dimensions down to that point. Delete the construction lines. Do the same thing here. Let's put the end of that. There we go. I'm going to use my dimspace command here. There's my base dimension. I want to make sure these are all in line. So 0. Run that again. There's my base dimension. I want to make sure that one is 3 feet, or 36 inches. And there we go. Dimensioning is finished. Next, we want to add in notes. So I'm going to go to my ANO notes layer. I'm going to add in now some leaders. So I'm going to go to my standard leader style, add in a multi-leader. I want to label the precast brackets. So kind of starting from the top